Welcome to today's episode. We're diving into a powerful relationship tool, the practice of taking a break during conflict. We often talk about the importance of staying connected, but sometimes the best way to protect your connection is to step away, intentionally and responsibly. In this episode, we'll guide you through a set of agreements designed to help you use breaks as a way to reset, calm down, and come back to each other with a fresh perspective. We'll explore why taking a pause isn't just about avoiding the issue, but preventing hurtful reactions and allowing space for repair. By the end, you'll have practical strategies to navigate these tense moments more gracefully, making your relationship stronger and more resilient. Up next on Master Your Marriage.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
New episode.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this topic.
Yeah, I wonder if some of our episodes are inspired what happens in our daily life.
Maybe we'll mention that later.
Yeah.
But we have talked a lot about taking a break it's dripped into a lot of different episodes that we've done. But I think we have a few new ways of talking about it today. So a few little nuances that we haven't talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And certainly learning how to take a break and I'll share some, as we go through the episode, I'm going to share some experiences that I've had and why it would have been, super important for us to maybe learn the tools that we want to share with you today.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I want to frame today's episode through the lens of the word violence.
Yeah.
And Robert wasn't real happy about me choosing this word. Were you?
But it is the name of a system and a book, right?
So just hang with me for just a second. I know you probably are already thinking, well, that doesn't apply to me. Most of us hear the word violence, as Robert did, and we picture some pretty disturbing physical acts, right? Hitting, pushing, things like that. But there's other more subtle ways that we might unintentionally cause harm in our relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So today I kind of want to reframe the word violence and give it just a slightly more broad and nuanced definition. But before I do that, I actually want to just clarify that we're not saying you or your partner are violent people.
Yep.
We have a saying that comes from NLP that people are not their behaviors, which means that a behavior doesn't need to define who a person is. So as we use the word violence a little bit today, remember that this is not a judgment of any person. It's simply a way for us to look at ourselves and potentially what we are doing and how we're communicating in a way that could potentially be harmful.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So this brings us to the important teaching point from Marshall Rosenberg, the creator of nonviolent communication. Dr. Rosenberg explains that violence isn't only physical, but it can manifest in lots of different ways, right? Including emotional, social, or even psychological kind of just pressures. And even without meaning to, we might say or do some things to make our partner feel dismissed, or maybe pressured or even isolated. And these kinds of actions, whether through our words or maybe body language or even lack of that, silence, can have a lasting impact on our relationship.
So I want to give a few examples
Sure.
of what this might be, right? So here's a few things that would be considered, at least through the lens of nonviolent communication, that could be considered as violent forms of communication. And I'll say it again, we've probably all done at least a couple of these. I know I have. So
if you've been listening to the show, you know that we've all done these things.
Right. So pressuring or controlling someone toward an outcome that you want, but perhaps they're not comfortable with. That would be an example.
Yeah.
Gossiping would be another one. Excluding or withdrawing, right? That causes someone to feel intense loneliness.
Yeah.
Avoiding responsibility could even be one. Name calling, manipulating, pressuring to silence someone. So these are just a few things that I jotted down that I thought, I wouldn't have thought that these were.
Yeah. I like, even in your list, I like to call it generalized bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of fits into that category. And again, we're not like trying to label anyone here.
Yeah.
Right. And before we started using this nonviolent communication as a tool, I probably would have labeled those behaviors as maybe harmful, not very nice, but I wouldn't have called them like violent in that term. And that's why Charlotte kind of, and I may have had a disagreement on this, but I like it in the terms that Dr. Rosenberg has laid out. Yeah.
And I also think it can be a really powerful way to think about it in this way with this broader lens, because none of us want to act violently. None of us
No.
really, at least when we're in our wise, mature self, we don't want to hurt our partner. And yet most of us have done at least one or two things on that list that I just shared. So this perspective, I think, is going to be a good perspective going into this conversation today that we're going to have, so that we can ask the question, is it possible that maybe I am communicating in a way with my partner that is a little bit more harmful than I intended?
And I like that, more harmful than I intended, right?
And for me, I can definitely say yes to that question. I can definitely say that with a resounding yes, that through this lens that I just shared, I can definitely say that at times I've communicated with Robert in a way that would be considered violent.
Yeah. Yeah. And me too. Like, and for me, usually it happens when I'm, when I fall into this dysregulation, right?
Yes.
When I've regressed into my adaptive child, the 3-year-old driving the school bus, right? And we've talked about this on the show before, is during these times of this regression that we're most likely to engage in behaviors that unintentionally cause harm to our partners.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So what do we need to do about it? We recognize it. What do we need to do about it? And, last week we talked a lot about self-regulation, and that would be the first step, right? Can I continue to just use and practice more self-regulation, both when I am feeling myself getting triggered, but even during regular times, so that I can become more resilient? But today we're going to talk more about what to do when that isn't working and it's gone a little too far. So we're going to talk about like the next step beyond self-regulation and the importance of taking a break, when to take that break. And I think we know why to take that break, but exactly how to take that break, so that we don't create this really big rupture in our relationship. And so we're going to suggest that you listen to this episode if you can with your partner, and then commit to these 10 agreements that we're going to outline today. We're going to outline 10 agreements that are really designed to protect your relationship from hurt and resentment that end up coming up when we continue to fight after we've reached that breaking point in our relationship and we start to kind of communicate in that violent way.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing to talk about. Like when we talking about it, when we talk about the word agreement, that means that we've discussed both sides and we agree that we're going to do this set of actions.
Right.
And I think we talk about a lot of things in our relationship, but how many of us have had a conversation about the way that we're going to disagree?
And
how we're going to fight. I don't want to use that word, but like how many of us have sat down and said, okay, when we have a disagreement or a fight, like what should we do? Like, oh, honey, I love you so much. We're never going to fight.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I like that. When should we be having an agreement? Should we be having an agreement when we're already in the middle of a fight?
Yeah.
No, we should be having that conversation and creating that agreement now when we're wise and mature and we are in a better state to be making that agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so here we go with the agreements, right? Okay. Agreement number 1, we agree to take timeouts as a thing we call a pattern interrupt. So a timeout is intended to be like this emergency break or quick stop. It's that pull cord you see in the movies when they pull it to stop the runaway train, and the brakes lock up. This stop action exists for those moments when we've already crossed or we're about to cross into the danger zone. Timeouts have one purpose and sort of one purpose only, and that's to abruptly halt, just pull the brakes on this violent or unconstructive interaction that you and your partner are currently having. Yeah. Right. So like we have a big fifth wheel that we tow behind the trailer. And one of the things that I always make sure that I hook up is that thin little cable. It's called the emergency braking system. And you've seen them on different trailers. And that is always connected, because if the trailer ever disconnects, something fails there, that little teeny wire pulls the emergency brake, much like the one that you've seen in the movies on the shows. So it stops this, which could be a 40-foot runaway train going down the freeway if it was no longer attached to the truck. I remember watching you hook that up the first time going, what is that little thing supposed to do? That tiny little thing that's like, how big thin is it? It's like as thin as yarn almost, right? And I'm like, that's supposed to stop this trailer. And Robert said, no, that's not to like help it hold on to the truck. Its job is to initiate the brake. Yeah. That's the braking system. So what we're talking about today is the braking system. The braking system. Yeah. That emergency brake, right? Okay. So agreement number 2. So Robert said it's a pattern interrupt to initiate the brake. Yep. Okay.
agreement number 2 is we agree to take timeouts from the I perspective, not the you perspective. So what does that mean? It means that if I'm calling for a break, I'm making that about me. I'm not making it about Robert. So if I'm calling for a timeout, it means that I recognize that I don't like how reactive I am becoming. And so I need to do something about it. I need to step back. So even in those moments where I'm thinking like, okay, Robert's actually way more reactive than me. Maybe it's best if I don't say, honey, you're acting like a 3-year-old. Maybe you need to go take a timeout right now.
Yeah, that hasn't worked well in the past, or it wouldn't work well in the future either.
No,
right?
no. So make it about us. Once we're nearing that point of no return, we're in that danger zone and we have to hit that break. It's not a good time for me to go character attack you or criticize you with a, hey, you're acting like a 3-year-old.
Yeah,
that's not going to help.
Probably won't help the entire conversation move forward. Yeah.
So that was agreement number 2, frame it from the I.
Right. And I like that. Agreement number 3, we take breaks responsibly and compassionately. Now, what do we mean by compassionately and responsibly, right? So taking a break is a way to create some temporary distance. And like all form of distance, there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. You can do it compassionately and responsibly, or we can do it harshly and maybe even mean, right? Responsible distance taking has 2 elements. One, you offer a clear explanation about why you're taking a break. Like, hey, look, I'm a little spun up. I think I just need some time. And 2, you make a commitment to return so that the other person doesn't feel abandoned. This is crucial, yes, especially if your partner has abandonment issues, so that when we would call for a break in years past, like I would really feel like it was me, like I was once again being abandoned. So it's really crucial to make sure that you have a plan to come back, that you tell your partner, look, I'm going to take a break for like X number of time, but we're going to come back and we're going to address it.
Well, I want you to talk about that a little bit more, because you've mentioned this before on past shows, that when we were younger, when we were getting into a fight, even when we were flooded, those past abandonment wounds caused you to feel like you had to fight and stay in the fight because you had to fight for your relationship.
Oh, I had to, and I'll share. I don't know if I've shared this with you, but it was the worst feeling. Like if we're in the middle of a disagreement, like, and my brain is just spinning to this whole thing. Like, man, this is bad. Like I got to solve this problem. I usually was the one who screwed it up, or I felt like I did. And then you said, we're taking a break. Like, I'm going to go for a walk. And I'm like, that's it. My marriage is over. Like, how do we go to that? How does my brain jump to that? Like, there's no reason that it would. You never said those things. But in the world of really having abandonment issues, like taking a break non-compassionately, just walking off, like my brain would just go to this, like, we're done. Like, oh my gosh. And, and then I'd fall into this deep despair, and then I'd want to try and come back and fight even harder for it. And so, like, I'm serious when I say, like, you really need to put a time on this. Like, I'm going to come back. We're going to do this for 60 minutes and we'll check in, or whatever your timetable is. Like, it's super important. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you just do the whole walk-off thing, listen to how that affected Robert.
Yeah.
That's not a compassionate or a responsible way to take a break. And so again, what were the 2 components? Number 1, you have to give an explanation.
Like, I'm getting a little heated. I just need to take some time. I'm not going to be myself. And 2, right. Like,
have a time.
There's going to be a time limit. Let's go take a break. And we're going to talk about how long to do that. We're going to talk about some of the things that you can and some of the other rules, right?
Right. Perfect. Otherwise, you leave your partner feeling abandoned, rejected.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Actually, one more thing I've noticed on this when we talk about taking a break responsibly is I have noticed that with some couples, they will kind of abuse taking a break.
Yeah, that can be a problem.
And they'll really just be like, you know what? I just kind of want to indulge with my avoidant behavior right now and just avoid this whole conversation. I don't want to have this conversation. So I'm going to call for a break, even though I'm not actually flooded and I don't actually need it.
Just going to put the walls up.
Just going to put the walls up.
Yeah.
Right. So unless it is a true emergency break, don't abuse.
Yeah.
Don't abuse this.
Because that's abused trust, right?
Totally.
Yeah. You've had these agreements and we agree that we're going to take these breaks responsibly and compassionately. We're not going to take these breaks at a whim or when we just feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like,
all right.
Yeah, we have to grow through these conversations.
Right. We're not going to be 100% comfortable in
No.
conversations.
Yeah.
So this isn't about being uncomfortable. This is about being flooded.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So what's agreement number 4?
Agreement number 4, have a verbal or physical signal for when you can't speak or you don't trust yourself to speak or say nice things. There's going to be moments when you know that if you start speaking, the worst in you is going to show up. And you might feel so overwhelmed that, keeping it under control may be just impossible at that point in time.
Right.
And you don't trust your words in that moment. So you can always choose to step away in these instances, but it's helpful that you're going to have some sort of prearranged signal with your partner, like maybe a word
Right.
or a verbal signal. So like maybe there's a timeout or something like this, right? You say like, hey, time.
Yeah.
Like, and just put your hands up like I just need a break. Or, we were talking to this one couple and they said they always use the word carrots
Right.
if things are getting too heated, which is a great, again, pattern interrupt because you're like, carrots, what was that?
Right.
So it pulls you out of kind of this deep thing that you're in, right? And injects a little humor, but it's also a way to say like, hey, I just need to take some time.
Right. So
yeah.
The key takeaway there with this agreement is it doesn't have to be a long conversation if you don't trust yourself. It could just be a code word or a gesture, a hand gesture that you've pre-agreed ahead of time and what that is it's shorthand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever signal you choose, that doesn't really matter because it just becomes shorthand for the normal compassionate exit. Right. So the normal compassionate exit in a perfect world would be, honey, I'm not really feeling like I'm comfortable with how I'm handling myself right now. I don't really trust myself right now. So I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to go calm down and I'm going to return to you in an hour once I've got a clearer mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect world, right?
Oh, wouldn't it be great if you're in an argument and you say, you know what, honey, I'm feeling a little dysregulated right now. I feel like my inner child has showed up and he's really just kind of running things. And I think it'd be best for our relationship if I take the little child outside. No, we're all just going to say like, I'm pissed.
I need a break.
I need a break or whatever it is. Or, when you, and you know this about your partner, when they're starting to go guns up, like, she takes her hair and puts it up in a ponytail, like she's ready to tussle. You're like, that could be your signal.
Right.
You're like, okay, we're not going to do this. Right.
Yeah. So a hand gesture is actually really useful. Yeah. All right. So what's the next one?
Okay. So the next one, breaks are unilateral, not bilateral. And when I say that, because we've talked about doing these things together, an agreement is always bilateral, but these breaks can be unilateral. We don't need agreement on both sides when you take a break, right? You don't need your partner's position to step away and to stop yourself from sort of going over the cliff, right? And saying something you might regret. So it can be a unilateral decision. So we're going to agree.
The agreement's bilateral, but the action itself doesn't need to be bilateral.
We're going to agree that any one person at any one point in time in this disagreement can just pull the cord.
Right. And that is different from most relationship tools.
Yeah.
Usually when we're doing compromise or we're doing some other tool, like it's bilateral, right? There's very few things that become a unilateral decision, but you are unilaterally deciding to remove yourself before things get worse.
Yeah.
You're not asking. You're stating, I need a break. I don't trust myself. I need an hour. And it's essential that once you declare that, you're setting a boundary that you follow through with that. So don't say, I need it, and then bring it back up again. Stay in the room. Or even if your partner still is like, no, let's keep going. No, you've called for a break. It's time for you to leave the room. It's time for you to stop talking, for everyone to stop talking. Just give that signal and leave. And if your partner tries to follow you outside of the room, maybe you need to go for a walk around the neighborhood. Maybe you need to get in the car and go drive down the street to get a cup of coffee. Whatever you need to do, just make sure, again, that you have discussed this ahead of time so that you both know that when the time comes, it is a unilateral decision so that hurt that Robert described earlier, that abandonment feeling doesn't come up.
Yeah. I mean, that hurt was the reason that I would stay in the fight, right? Like I would just no, I just can't let go of this. So again, the agreement is that it's a unilateral decision.
Once we need it, yes.
Yeah, this is my superpower. I get to, it's like when you're playing cards and you have that one card that stops the game.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, oh, okay. Yep, you're right.
I love that.
You got that one.
Yes.
Okay. Agreement number 6. We're going to check in with each other while we're on our break.
So if your break is going on longer than 30 minutes to an hour, definitely just shoot a little text, right? Like, I'm still working on it. I'm still calming myself down. I just need probably another 30 minutes. I just need maybe another hour, and then we can regroup.
Yeah. And I remember in the past when we've sort of taken breaks, and as you get better at these agreements, you realize that your relationship will just flow in this way. You don't have to say like, oh, it's on to number 6 now. It's not a stepwise progression. But, and I remember one time when we were taking a break, I just came by and just checked on you. You looked up at me and I think you're reading a magazine or just mindlessly scrolling, which is a great way to do it. And I remember to just touch your shoulder as I walked by.
Yeah.
Like just this nonverbal communication, but there's a lot that can be communicated in that way.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Agreement number 7 is to use your break wisely. So again, a break is not a time to dwell on your anger, to ruminate on the situation, or to plan your next move. Like my next counterattack is going to be this.
Yeah. I'm going to write down all the comebacks. Well, when she said this, I should have said that.
No.
Yeah.
So the purpose is to go calm yourself down and prevent that emotionally harmful, destructive behavior from rupturing your relationship. So you need to keep that goal front and center in your mind and have that goal always take priority, right? No meaningful conversation can happen when you're disconnected from your mature, wise self. And so you have to take that time to engage in activities that's going to bring you back to that mature, wise self.
Yeah.
So what's going to help you to reconnect with that better version of you? Is it reading something? Is that going to help you to shift your mindset? Is it exercise? Is it journaling? Is it breath work? Is it yoga, a bike ride, taking a bath? What is it that could help you to reset? Whatever that is, that's what needs to be prioritized.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I love the Gottmans did a study on this.
They did.
Right. The magazine study, which we like to talk about. I love that. It was great research.
Do you want me to share it? Do you want to share it?
No. Well, I mean, we can talk about it. So I don't remember how many couples were in the study.
So they took 100 couples.
Yeah, it was 100.
And they had these couples
They started a fight.
Yeah. They got them to start a fight.
Yeah.
And during that first few minutes of that interaction, the researchers were behind the scenes videoing and writing down every positive to negative comment that was being said. And they were creating a ratio of positivity to negativity in this conversation.
Right.
So as you can imagine, it's starting to get heated. They're having a conflict, the biggest problem in their relationship right now. And then the researchers come in and stop them.
Yeah. In the middle.
Right in the middle of it, and say, okay, you're group A, you're going to do this. Group B, you're going to do this. Group C, you're going to do that. And what they were was group
A was magazines, right? That's what we called the magazine study.
Right. So group A, they had them go read a magazine for 15 minutes.
Okay. Group B, they were the appreciation group.
Yeah. So group B, they gave them a handout and said, okay, go in the other room, fill this here's a worksheet. At the top, it says, I appreciate. And it had all these beautiful, wonderful things about attributes on the list, and said, circle 3 things that remind you of your partner. He's considerate, he's kind, he's patient, whatever. Circle 3 things. And then the third list was for the third group, group C.
I call it the retaliation group, but I don't remember what the group was called. But
it was just negativity, right? Right. They just said a list of negative attributes. Yeah. Go circle 3 things about your partner, and they were all negative options.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was their hypothesis?
Well, I would think that if I was going to design the study, I would think that it would be, focusing on appreciation for your partner would sort of help pull you out of it, right?
And bring in more positivity, right?
Right.
Well, the magazine group was actually their control group, and their hypothesis didn't, like you said, that was their hypothesis, and it didn't pan out for them. Yeah. So what happened was the group that read the magazines actually came back, and now they had them finish the conversation. But this time, again, measuring positivity to negativity, the ones that had read the magazine actually had the best improvement. They had more positivity when they came back from reading a magazine, where the other 2 groups didn't change at all.
Yeah, probably the appreciation group was like, I'd appreciate it if you
do more of this.
Yeah, if you do more of this. Yeah.
That was what they said. They actually said that the appreciation group didn't follow the instructions.
Yeah, without a doubt.
They went in the other room and went, gee, I sure wish my partner had a few more of these attributes, but let me circle a few that I think you need to work on, sweetheart.
So the more you, not me, right? Not I in this case.
So the point was, though, what did work?
Yeah, just disconnecting from the conversation.
Right.
Right. So reading a magazine is a way to just sort of disconnect. You're not thinking about one-upping. You're not reprocessing. You're not rehashing the conversation. You're not reliving it. You're just calming down. And when you disconnect, it's a great way to sort of work on self-soothing.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer thinking about it.
Perfect. All right.
I love the fact that they were able to get them to start a disagreement.
Yeah.
But in all long-term relationships, there's always one thing that you're always working through.
There's always, well, 69% of our conflicts are perpetual.
Yeah,
So we always have something in our back pocket that we can disagree on.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right. Agreement number 8.
We're
coming
almost there.
up, right? We're almost there, right? Always come back.
Yes.
Right? If you and this again is probably Robert's abandonment issues coming through there, right?
Yes.
But if you call for a break and you don't return, you're breaking your word, right? This will damage trust and leave your partner feeling hurt and abandoned, unimportant.
Yes.
And they might start to commiserate on all these other types of things. But so how long do you think a break should be? Like, is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour?
How long does it take for your stress hormones to metabolize?
Oh my gosh. Stress hormones are going to take 30 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's if you do something to help burn them off.
Right.
Like taking a walk or something active, right? Because we're just ratting fuel. We need to burn that gas off.
Probably not 5 minutes.
No, not on the 5-minute break.
Yeah. And sometimes it might take up to like 24 hours.
And depending on how good you are at self-soothing, like if you've practiced yoga or meditation or breath work or just managing your inner child, if you've practiced some of those self-soothing
you're going to
techniques,
get faster at it.
You're going to get faster at it.
Yeah.
But if it's new for you, like you might want to spend a little bit of time doing that. And you want to return as soon as you can, right? But you got to be able to do it without falling into those old strategies, right? Some of these old losing strategies, like come back and then you're just right back where you were.
So one of the things I want to talk about though, is that coming back comes back to being bilateral again.
Yeah.
Right. It was unilateral to leave, but coming back has to be a bilateral thing. So if coming back as your mature, wise self has to apply to both of you.
Right. Without a doubt.
You need to both come back as adults. Don't come back with a chip on your shoulder and start escalating things all over again. Only come back, as Robert said, when you're ready to make peace.
Or you can't come back and say, I'm ready. Aren't you ready? Like, aren't you grown up enough yet?
Right.
Yeah,
so if Robert's not ready and I'm ready, I'm not going to pressure him to come back if he's genuinely, truly out there working on it. Right. Yeah. That's not going to work. So what do I need to do if you're still working on it? I need to continue to self-soothe and just calm myself down until you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. We ready? Agreement number 9. Okay. Use a 24-hour moratorium on highly triggered topics.
Okay.
That's a one, right? So one big mistake that couples often make is they want to re-engage in the process, and maybe it's just a little too soon.
So here's the thing. I love processing regrettable incidents with couples, and it's a tool we do ourselves all the time. Being able to process a regrettable incident is super important and a key part of the repair process, but you don't need to come back and instantly process that regrettable incident.
No, I think there needs to be a little time from the regrettable incidents to the processing.
So when you come back, just take a minute to be kind to each other. Just spend some time being kind before you dive right back into the issue. Robert mentioned earlier, and, this was a time when we had a disagreement late at night, and it was one of those, because I hate that advice, don't go to bed angry. It's just terrible.
Worst advice ever.
Right. But we were like, you know what, we're going to resume this tomorrow. Let's just get some sleep. And of course, at 11 o'clock, everything seems catastrophic. It seems like your world is coming to an end. And when you wake up at 7 a.m. the next morning, it doesn't feel that way anymore.
No.
Right. And I just remember this one morning where you reached over in bed in the morning and you just kind of held my hand and you didn't say anything yet. I think we were both just a little bit, like we had a little wound, Yeah. And then you came over a little closer, and then I inched over a little closer, and then we snuggled for a little bit. And really, there were not a lot of words. It just was a little bit of touching. And so whatever it is, like, take a moment to just be kind to each other, give each other a hug, make your spouse a cup of coffee, maybe rest your head in his lap and just co-regulate now that you're in a state of calm. Just take that time to reconnect first. You don't have to jump right back into this really highly triggering topic.
Yeah, especially if it was really rough, right? And as I mentioned before, one of the worst pieces of advice that I ever heard, and I'm sure you've heard this as well, like don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, like what is going to get solved at 11:30 at night, especially when you're trying to solve a problem that is difficult for both of you. And now you put a time constraint. Like, oh, by the way, like we got to get up at 6 tomorrow. So let's solve this now.
Right.
And, and not end up being pissed off at each other and going to bed mad. Like, that's just no way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you're just going to have to agree that we need to table the decision, and maybe going to bed is your break.
Yes.
And when we wake up, we're going to pick this up again and then try to work on those communication things in the middle of the night. Like, I don't always sleep like a mummy. Sometimes I'm rolling around. So I'll reach over and touch her. And I think that was one of the things we did the night before. Just like, I'm just checking in, just want to make sure that you know that I love you, even though we're having this thing. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Last one. Agreement number 10. Agree ahead of time that you're going to get help when your brakes aren't working. So let's say you've done all of these things, but there's just certain topics that are totally gridlocked for you and your spouse. And it seems like no matter what, when that topic gets brought up, whether it's money or parenting, whatever it is, it always just triggers a nasty reaction.
Yeah.
And you're never able to come back maturely, return to the conversation and come up with a win-win. So perhaps that's a signal for you. That's a signal that maybe you need to get some outside support in order to have a conversation that can be constructive and talk about, you know, how you compromise in this situation or find a win-win that represents both of your values and dreams.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up today's episode, just remember that as we talk about these agreements, it's not necessarily a checklist, but you are going to agree about how you're going to disagree.
Yeah.
And how you're going to do it. Right. Take breaks and timeouts and make a commitment that you're going to protect your relationship by understanding like how you might react in these situations, right? Because if you let your dysregulated child out, you're going to say and do things that are hurtful and you're not going to show up as your best self. So I think the hardest part about any of these things, right, is having this conversation now, like, hey, these are the agreements or this is how we're going to disagree. And you have to be grown up enough to realize when you're falling into dysregulation.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the hardest part. Like, how am I supposed to be grown up enough to say, look, oh, you know what? I'm being a jackass.
Yeah.
Like now I'm going to need a break. I think that's the hardest part. So before you even get to that point, just understand that if you start to take deep breaths or pause or your words are like maybe coming out a little bit louder and you're raising your voice, that's the time that you need to take a break. Just understanding that piece, understanding yourself and understanding that taking a break is probably the most compassionate thing you can do for your relationship.
Perfect. All right, you guys, thanks for being with us today. As always, be kind to each other this week. Put each other first. It's the small things done often that make the greatest impact.